Hi, my name is Sunder Balasubramanian. I'm from the class of 2004. I'm currently working with Coupang based out of Seoul. I lead marketing for all the international expansions for Coupang here. My experience over the last 20 years has been across advertising, FMCG, and recently consumer tech. Pre-ISB was advertising. From ISB, I joined Colgate and was there for 14 years. My last role was category head for the toothpaste business in India. Post that, I moved on to Hotstar. I was part of the launch team there for the subscriptions business in India from 2019. And for the last year or so, been with Coupang in Seoul. My toughest career transition so far, it's probably been one where I moved from Colgate to Hotstar. For me, it was a move from FMCG to consumer tech. It was a move from a traditional marketing role to a digital first one. It was a move from a process-driven organization to a startup environment. It was a move from a place where I would spend time doing 100 PPT slides a week to one where I probably did 20 in the whole year. And it was a move from, a 10 to 15% year-on-year growth mindset, which was great, to 10x growth mindset year-on-year being just par. So that for me was the toughest career transition to make till date. My inspiration to go forward, a few points there. One was just my desire to want to learn more about digital. In all the consumer immersions that I had done in my role at Colgate, one thing that I kept seeing was that consumers were probably ahead of the digital adoption than I was as a marketeer, and that scared me a bit. So I wanted to kind of equip myself in that sphere and space, and that's why I wanted to go and make this switch. That was probably the first piece. The second one was, interestingly, it came from a book that I read, a book called Catalyst by Chandramouli Venkatesan. He speaks about, how you build careers, and he had an interesting theory that most people, let's assume people all coming out of an ISB, most of us would have a very similar first half of the career, but the choices that you make then kind of differentiate and discriminate between the good and the great. And that kind of got me thinking about how, after probably 14, 15 years, how would I want to fashion and change and look at the second half of my career? And that kind of propelled me to think about other options. And the last piece was the reason or the inspiration to go forward was a bit of a self-challenge. I was in a specific environment and culture for 14 years, and I quite honestly wanted to see if I would survive in a startup environment. So those really were the reasons why I kind of made this switch. 3 insights about the ups and downs during this career transition. I don't know about 3, but here are a few. As I went through the whole transition, what I realized was understanding digital and digital marketing was actually easy beyond the initial jargons that you hear. If you kind of ask the right questions, you understand that fundamentally digital marketing is not as difficult for someone to adapt as I earlier thought it was. What was probably more different for me was adapting to the concept of speed. In an environment like where I was in an FMCG company where you're doing things at scale across the country, you would probably spend a lot of time perfecting something before you go out and launch something. I have spent anywhere between 18 months to 24 months before launching a product there. As opposed to that, in Hotstar, when I came in, I joined in Feb of 2019, and we were due to launch by end of March of that year. So 45 days to go. And outside of course, the base product being ready, there was nothing beyond that was ready. So everything had to be done in that specific period. So adapting to that sense of speed was very different for me. The concept or a word that I learned and imbibed there was audacity. That to me was a very, very interesting learning that I carry forward. When we were launching, there were multiple competitors who had already been in the OTT subscription market in the country, with 5 to 10 million subscriptions each. And when we kind of set out to launch, we said it's not about becoming the number 2 or the number 1. We said we would want to get to 20 million in a span of 2 years. And that sense of audacity, I balked at it when I first heard it, but I kind of went with the flow since everyone was in that. And slowly and surely, it kind of becomes a part of who you are. And 2 years later, forget 20, we were well ahead, much more ahead of that. That to me was a very, very interesting concept of how you look at growth. And the third, from a cultural point of view, was about, again, another word that I learned, radical candor. From an environment in FMCG, it was all about consistent coaching and feedback, and for want of another word, always being nice to people. As opposed to this startup environment where speed was so critical, it was always about people telling you what they thought right then, right there, with no kind of filters attached. Again, something that kind of hits you very hard when you encounter it first. But as you slowly realize and come to terms with it, you realize that radical candor is not a judgment on the other person, but it's really about a collective philosophy of getting things done better and faster. And it's that spirit of transparency that you kind of view it with and you appreciate it with. And again, something as I learned, it just got much better for me, and I realized its benefits. So those are probably some of the things that I went through during this transition. A few things that I want to leave you all with. Nothing earth-shattering, but I think it's stuff that I've kind of come to realize over time. One of the things that I was told and I learned early on is this concept of figuring out what your learning model is. You've never arrived in life as far as skills or competencies or growth is concerned. It's a constant work in progress. So it's always about almost having a list of things that you feel excited enough about, but are also a little uncomfortable about. So it kind of wants to make you seek and look at those things a little more. And irrespective of whether you're just out of B school, whether you have 10 years work ex, you have 25 years work ex, there will always be these areas. So I think that's one thing that I've kind of started doing. And, I think it's an interesting one. I've been doing it for a few years now only, but I want to see where that takes me. At this point in time for my learning model and in the work that I do, while brand building is almost a place of comfort for me, taking brand building in the digital universe is new. The amazing jargon words of blockchain and crypto that I will try and use, but to really imbibe it and understand it and put it into action is not something I'm comfortable with. So that's something that's definitely on my list of things to do, so to speak. Each one of us will have our own, and I think I'm kind of creating this for myself and kind of ticking off something new that I've learned every year. The second one, which I've probably kind of learned a little bit more about, and maybe some of that is also thanks to the pandemic, is managing mental time. I think many of us very quickly got into managing physical time, which is block time off, when will you work, when will you have time off otherwise. But blocking mental time off, which is even when you're not physically in front of a laptop or at an office, how do you kind of switch off a little bit, is something that I've had to force myself to learn a little bit more of, including And it's simple stuff. It is about, turning off notifications on your mobile phone when you're off. It is about, not doing work on WhatsApp. It is about ensuring Slack notifications are off when you're not doing it. This mental time off, and how do you use that time to do other things that you're more passionate about, is something that, I've kind of doing a little bit more of right now. And also doing that because I actually think it'll make all of us better off in the work that we do when we can't do this. So those are probably two interesting things of the recent past that I would want to kind of leave you all with. What's the leadership lesson I wish I had learned sooner? I think irrespective of everything that I've spoken, this is going to come like an antithesis, which is the fact that I don't think there is any single one formula that will apply to all of us. I've worked in different environments to kind of understand now that, there are different ways for us to grow, whether it's at a business level or at a personal level or at a professional level for us. I've been in a process-driven company. I've been in an organization where it's more individual-driven. I've been in an organization where, you spend more time sharpening the axe, as opposed to organizations which believe in start cutting the tree and then figuring life out. Been in places where it's been 40 hours work week, been in places where it's been 60-hour ones. And I don't think it's about one being better than the other or one being the route to growth / success. I think there is a certain balance that all of them will kind of come to figure out the best model for that. And that applies to each of us. Each of us will need to kind of find what the right balance is and, what kind of makes it better for us. It's always about making things better than you found it, but it's also about feeling good and enjoying doing that. As long as we find that balance, each of us will do it in our own way. And I think that's perfectly fine. The reason I say I should have learned it sooner is because many years back when I saw Kung Fu Panda and Po realized that there is no secret ingredient in the soup, I should have kind of taken it more seriously and applied this, because it's exactly the same logic. So that to me is the one leadership lesson I wish I'd learned sooner.